Hello, my fellow nerds and nerdettes. Tosan here, bringing you a hunter guide for talents in PvP. This is going to go over the normal talents and the PvP talents, so I'm going to try to be as thorough as I can without trying to drag it on too long. So, remember, disclaimer, some of these things may be subject to change in the future. I'm going to be experimenting with as much stuff as I can over, the course of my arena gameplay, and I'll update you with new videos if anything changes. But for now, this is what I've got for you. So, the first tier of talents, a lone wolf, steady focus, and careful aim. So, the general rule of thumb in arena is if you don't have a Mortal Strike debuff on your team, you're going to typically want one. If you don't have a Mortal Strike on your team, then you're going to typically want to play with a pet, which means you're going to want to go one of these talents here. But if you do have a Mortal Strike, obviously you want Lone Wolf, because this is by far the biggest damage increase. So, when I am forced to use a pet, like when I'm playing Ret Hunter, for example, I typically use a pet for the healing debuff, because the healing debuff does have a lot of value. Not just because that, even if you CC a healer, you're going to usually have some sort of heal over time effect on the target. So, if you're fighting a shaman, they're going to have Earth Shield, Riptide, or Enveloping Mist from a monk and stuff like that. But generally speaking, you're going to want to go careful aim or steady focus. Now, between these two talents, none of them seem great. I usually go with careful aim because normally I don't feel that like I need any extra focus. I feel like steady focus is not that valuable because other than when I have true shot active and I am not CC'd at all and I can just spam aim shots, that's when steady focus is okay. But for the most part, I don't really have any focus issues, so I go careful aim if I'm using a pet. But it's not that great. Neither of these talents are amazing. But if you have to use a pet, you gotta use a pet. So I would go with careful aim, otherwise lone wolf. Now for the second tier of talents, true aim, black arrow, and lock and load. I would say stay away from black arrow for the most part, for PvP anyway, because we tend to do better with burst, CC and burst combinations anyway, and the damage just doesn't feel that high for the focus cost. So I typically, for my playing with black arrow, am pretty disappointed in it in PvP. So lock and load and true aim are your real choices. The general rule of thumb here is going to be, if you're going to be able to tunnel a target for very long, if you think you're going to be able to maintain this debuff on a target, definitely take true aim. One thing that the tooltip does not reflect, by the way, that I only recently found out, whenever it says each successive arcane shot or aim shot fired at the target increases the stacks. However, it says increases the damage of those shots. So that would imply that only arcane shot, which you're not even using because you're using sidewinders, and aim shot get a damage increase. But the actual debuff itself says otherwise. This actually increases your marked shot damage as well. And this is not just a tooltip error here on the debuff. It actually does increase marked shot damage. So now that I know that, true aim is definitely the winning choice. Now the problem with lock and load is it's not that consistent. Since it's completely random, sometimes it'll proc 5 times in a row, and that's amazing. But most of the time, it doesn't proc that often. Lock and load is just very unpredictable and unreliable. Sometimes it's just amazing, and most of the time, I'd say on average, I get 1 to 2 procs per, typical arena match that lasts like 2 minutes or 3 minutes or something. So I've actually been leaning far more towards true aim lately, and I recommend it. Lock and load is really good though if you're going to be switching targets very often, or if you're fighting, maybe you're going to chase a Mistweaver down, you want to attack a Mistweaver or a Resto Druid, some highly mobile healer, and let's say you have melee training you. You're not going to be that mobile, and it's going to be very difficult to chase a target and spam aim shots, because when you're playing with Sidewinders, aim shot is the only thing that you have that will stack true aim. So this is only good if you're attacking people that are going to be out in the open frequently. So lock and load is really good if you're going to be swapping targets a lot or chasing somebody that is pretty mobile, because those instant procs will help you do damage on the move. For the next tier of talents, post haste definitely takes the cake. It's pretty obvious why. The root and slow break is pretty amazing. The sprint is nice too, but mainly the root and snare break is just phenomenal, and these other talents just really don't compare. Hopefully they do something about that to make this tier more competitive later, which they actually probably will. They said something about making a lot of mandatory talents baseline for people in the future, so maybe post haste will become baseline later on, who knows. But for now, post haste is definitely the right choice. Here, the only choice is patient sniper. You have to take this all the time, it's just way too good. I've tried, for fun and BGs and stuff, trying to play without patient sniper, and it's just so bad to not have it. These other talents just don't compare. This tier is totally situational. For the most part, you take binding shot though. Wyvern Sting I almost never take because in our PvP talents we have Freezing Arrow and Scatter Shot, which both are the same DR as Wyvern Sting, by the way. And usually you don't want that much DR going around. So usually I take Binding Shot. But occasionally you will want Camouflage, depending on the situation. For instance, if I'm fighting a rogue team, or like a rogue mage team, where they're going to, you know, both be stealth or invisible in the opener, and I want to prevent them from getting a really hard opener on me, I will very often take Camouflage against matchups like that, just so I can get the jump on them, rather than they get the jump on me. Now remember, we're talking strictly arena play here, so, you know, out in the world you might like Camouflage better, just for sneaking around and avoiding unwanted ganks, but from a purely arena perspective, I almost always take Binding Shot. Murder of Crows is hands down the best for single target damage, and Volley is awful in PvP, so usually your choices are Barrage or Murder of Crows. Now in Battlegrounds and stuff like that, you can go Barrage, you know, if you want to do a lot of AoE damage, and that's great. And but generally speaking, Murder of Crows is just amazing for single target damage. So usually, you know, you'll pop Murder of Crows on the target, CC the healer, and then burst that one target. Now, I am going to be experimenting with comps in the future where I play a more cleave-oriented playstyle rather than just CCing the healer and focusing one guy. I might give a shot at trying some really heavy, you know, spread damage kind of comp where you're just hitting any target you want at any given time, in which case I could see Barrage being useful in that regard. But for now, Murder of Crows is definitely the best. Sidewinders is hands down the best choice in the last tier of talents, just because it instantly, no matter what. See, whenever you're playing with Arcane Shot, you have to wait for the proc to make it to where it says your next Arcane Shot will proc Mark Shot, and then you have to Mark Shot, and then you get the Patient Sniper debuff. Sidewinders will always proc the debuff that increases your damage on aim shot and marked shot and all that. So the combination of Patient Sniper and Sidewinders is just amazing, and it is absolutely mandatory right now. So that covers the normal talents. Let's go to the PvP talents. Again, the first tier of talents is totally situational based on what you're fighting. If you go into an arena match, you just have to make this judgment call for yourself. I almost always take Relentless, mainly because I'm Orc. And, you know, you're hit with various short CCs, reducing them all by 20% is pretty nice, especially if you're an Orc for those stuns. Adaptation does have its place, though. Keep in mind, if you are an Orc and you go Adaptation, something like a Leg Sweep, this only works on CCs that are 5 seconds or longer. So if you're not an Orc, this will, you know, break Leg Sweep or Chaos Nova from a Demon Hunter. So stuns like that will get broken. But if you're an Orc, keep in mind that the Adaptation will not work because your passive ratio will reduce the stun duration, making it less than 5 seconds. So just be wary of that. But Adaptation is definitely really good when you're going to get hit with fairly infrequent long duration CCs. But if you're going to get hit with a ton of spammable CC, like if you're fighting a Mage Druid combo and you're going to get hit with Polymorphs and Cyclones very frequently, more than likely, I typically stick to Relentless just to reduce everything. Because it sucks when you auto-trinket a Polymorph that your healer could have dispelled, and then you get full Cycloned or something like that. So be careful with Adaptation, but it does have its places. And On-Use Trinket I almost never take as an Orc, but again, it does have its place. If you are fighting a team where you think timing a really crucial CC break matters a lot, then definitely consider that choice. For this tier, I almost always take Quick Shots. Although Initiation is kind of nice for an opening burst, because it'll increase the crit chance of, say, your Wind Burst, or sorry, yeah, your Wind Burst artifact ability, which hits really hard. Increasing the crit chance of that in an opener is really nice. But the problem is, the way the game works right now, usually targets are not topped off that frequently, and that's partly why I don't like Careful Aim all that much, and I reluctantly take it when I have to. But for the most part, targets, it's not like previous expansions where targets, you know, you burst them and get them low, and then they just get topped off with huge cooldowns and major healing. So Initiation, I find, isn't as useful as I'd like it to be, just because people are not that frequently topped off. Quick Shots is just all around amazing. It reduces your global cooldown more, and it gives you more haste for faster casts, and you just can't go wrong with Quick Shots. Focus Fire is okay in like Battlegrounds and stuff, but in Arena, you're almost always going to take damage every 8 seconds, so this will be useless in most Arena settings. For this talent tier, I almost always take Survival Tactics because it's just versatile. It works against everything. If you have 2 melee on you and you know they're about to pop their cooldowns and burst you, a well-timed Feign Death will reduce a lot of damage. And this is amazing for just dispelling dots and all sorts of debuffs. And, you know, again, if you're really good at timing it when you know you're about to be bursted, it's just amazing. Cat-like Reflexes is honestly pretty lackluster because it only works with critical melee strikes, which means if you're fighting a target that does a lot of special abilities that aren't melee, like let's say a Death Knight, you know, the Howling Blast and stuff like that, I don't know, every time I take cat-like reflexes I regret it because it doesn't make me feel any tankier, so I kind of hope this talent gets buffed at some point. Dragon Scale Armor also kind of has its place, but the problem with Dragon Scale Armor is it sort of overlaps in the same usefulness category as Survival Tactics. Yeah, you could take reduced damage from magic damage over time effects, or you could just completely dispel them every 30 seconds. So I usually take Survival Tactics almost all the time, and I rarely take the other two for obvious reasons. If you're fighting like Shadow Priest UA lock, this seems really tempting to reduce damage by 20%. But what happens when you're covered in dots? You can just feign death and dispel them all. That's also really good. So generally speaking, Survival Tactics is the way to go. On this tier, this used to be really good for spamming aim shots and keeping a consistent debuff on people. But now that they've nerfed it, I almost always go Spider Sting, but it's pretty obvious the situations that you'll want to use Spider Sting. Pretty much if there's any sort of DPS caster on the enemy team, you're going to want to go Spider Sting. If it's just a melee cleave and you're not really going to attack the healer, then Scorpion Sting is a good alternative to reduce crit. Viper Sting I almost never take because I don't usually train healers, and a lot of healers, for instance, monks have like an instant Vivify. It's a casted heal, but they can make it instant. That will actually remove Viper Sting when they use it and start channeling their Soothing Mist. So against monks, for instance, it's not that good. It's pretty good against druids and resto shamans to an extent if you're training them, but honestly I just almost never take this because I feel like the silence on casters or the crit reduction on physical classes is a lot better. In this tier, you almost never want to take TNT just because using it that frequently will not only DR itself a lot, but you're just giving up vital utility here. Freezing Arrow or Scattershot are situational. I almost always take Freezing Arrow in Arena, but Scattershot does have its place. For instance, if you fight a team with, say, a Mistweaver monk, and it becomes very hard, because Mistweavers are very mobile, and they can start channeling Soothing Mist and then duck behind a pillar. Some comps, especially when I'm being trained and I can't move around freely, it becomes very difficult to land a Freezing Arrow effectively, so I will very often take Scattershot, because it is the same DR. I will take Scattershot just because it's instant and it's a lot easier to land in those situations, but 90% of the time I take Freezing Arrow. Now keep in mind, the one benefit to Scattershot is it does not break from Sidewinders or Marked Shot. So if the healer is kind of in your Sidewinder DPS path, you don't have to worry about breaking that CC, whereas with Freezing Arrow, that'll break easily, so you gotta be more careful. On this tier, Sniper Shot is freaking awful, so don't touch it. Unless they buff it in the future, but right now it's garbage. So your options are Spray and Pray and True Shot Mastery. Now, for a while in Arena, I've been preferring True Shot Mastery because the 30 seconds off of your cooldown is pretty insane. Being able to use this the second it comes up after 2 minutes can win you games very often. It's an incredibly strong cooldown, and a lot of the time, you know, it'll have like 10 seconds left, and I'll be like, yes, we can win in 10 seconds. I'll do a CC chain and pop my cooldowns and do crazy damage, and I've won a lot of games because of this talent. However, I might start leaning more towards Spray and Pray if I do play. I mentioned earlier I might try Barrage in a more cleavy, AoE damage comp, in which case Spray and Pray is really good. Now, one thing I did underestimate about Spray and Pray, though, is whenever you pop True Shot, it means your Arcane Shot, Multi-Shot, or Sidewinders, which replaces those, will always mark the target with Hunter's Mark, which means if you have Spray and Pray and you pop True Shot, the cooldown on your Sidewinders in PvP is going to be insanely low. So this is a good way to get a lot of instant damage. When you pop True Shot, instead of having to rely on, hard-casted aim shots over and over, you can actually do a lot of damage on the move, instant damage, just by Sidewinder Marked Shot, Sidewinder Marked Shots, Sidewinder Marked Shot, because with all the haste from True Shot and the cooldown reduction, you're going to have, especially with quick shots as well, you're going to reduce the cooldown so much that you can use probably 6 or 7 Sidewinders in the span of a True Shot. I'm not 100% sure how many you can squeeze in there, but it's a lot. So I've been testing that a lot lately, and I like it. So I'm not totally decided which one I think is better for an arena perspective. For a battleground perspective, Spray and Pray definitely takes the cake. Anyway, that is it for this guide on Hunter talents in PvP. I hope you found it useful, and hopefully I didn't bore you to death by dragging it on too long. But I will also be doing arena guides very soon. After this one, I'm going to do a Demon Hunter talent guide for PvP, and then I'm also going to be doing general arena guides for both Hunter and Demon Hunter. So stay tuned for more. Thanks for watching, and peace out.